Emily tried her best to fit into Ryan's family, even though she felt out of place from the beginning. She kept telling herself that love was supposed to be patient, understanding, and forgiving. She wanted to believe that Ryan's family only needed time to warm up to her. But each visit, each dinner, each conversation proved something different. The more she tried to be polite and respectful, the more they pushed her down. Linda especially seemed to enjoy reminding her of everything she lacked. She compared her to other women, questioned her choices, and spoke as if Emily was someone Ryan had picked up out of pity. Emily learned to smile through it, keeping her voice steady even when her heart felt heavy. Ryan never defended her. He always said his mother didn't mean it like that, or that Emily was too sensitive. He acted as if her hurt feelings were the problem, not his family's behavior. Over time, Emily realized that staying quiet was the only way to avoid arguments. But inside, she felt something slowly breaking. She started noticing how Ryan dismissed her ideas, how he made decisions without her, how he treated her as if she owed him something. None of it was loud or dramatic, but it left marks that were hard to ignore. Still, Emily pretended everything was fine. She got good at controlling her expression, nodding politely, and hiding how much each cruel remark stung. She trained herself not to react, not to show that the words hit her deeper than anyone realized. But silence didn't mean she accepted any of it. Silence meant she was watching, learning, and collecting every moment that revealed who they truly were. She didn't plan anything at first. She only wanted to understand why they hated her so much. But the insults kept coming, sharper and more personal, until she knew she had to protect herself. Little by little, she started writing things down. Statements, dates, situations, and the exact words they used. She saved receipts, messages, and anything else that proved how they treated her. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing, not even her closest friend. She stored everything quietly, like someone saving pieces of a puzzle she wasn't ready to solve yet. The more she gathered, the clearer the picture became. Their cruelty wasn't random. It wasn't misunderstanding. It was a pattern meant to make her small and easy to control. Emily's calmness confused them. They thought she was finally accepting her place, that she was too gentle to ever push back. They didn't see the shift happening inside her. They didn't notice how her eyes stopped pleading for kindness, or how her voice no longer trembled. She was done begging for respect they never planned to give. What they didn't know was that Emily was preparing for the moment everything would change. She wasn't reacting anymore, she was observing. She wasn't breaking, she was building. And when the time came, their own words would be the very thing that destroyed the image of control they held over her. Emily started noticing changes in Ryan long before she understood what they meant. At first, she thought he was stressed from work or distracted by responsibilities. But slowly, the truth became clearer. His tone toward her grew colder, not just tired or distant. He started speaking to her the same way his mother did, short, sharp, and filled with quiet judgment. When she shared her hopes for her career, he told her they were unrealistic. When she mentioned wanting to go back to school, he laughed softly and said she should focus on things that actually matter, which always seemed to mean serving his needs, not her own. The shift wasn't sudden, which made it harder to see at first. It was small things, comments that sounded harmless but left a sting, dismissive hand waves when she tried to explain her feelings, or subtle looks of annoyance when she tried to talk about something important to her. Over time, those small things grew into a pattern. Emily began realizing that Ryan wasn't just becoming like his mother. He had probably always been this way. She simply hadn't noticed because she wanted their relationship to work so badly. Macy added her own part to the pattern. At every family gathering, she slipped in snide remarks about Emily's clothes, her background, or her career. She called them jokes, but everyone knew they weren't. The Brooks family often laughed when Macy spoke, but Ryan never told her to stop. He never said a word to defend Emily. He just sat there, letting the comments sink in as if they were harmless fun. Emily forced herself to smile, even when her chest tightened with shame. The more Emily saw, the more the pieces connected. This wasn't a family with strong personalities or harsh humor. This was a family that believed they were above others, and they treated anyone outside their circle like they were less. Emily realized that Linda's insults, Macy's jabs, and Ryan's coldness weren't coincidences. They were all part of the same dynamic. They were used to controlling people by making them feel small. And Emily had unknowingly stepped into their favorite target position. Once she understood this, everything looked different. She saw the deliberate timing of their comments, the way they chose moments when she was vulnerable or unprepared. She noticed how they complimented each other for behaviors that hurt her, and how no one ever challenged them. She felt like she had walked into a storm without knowing it was coming. But on the outside, Emily stayed calm. She didn't argue or confront. She didn't show anger or let them see the hurt they caused her. She kept that part hidden. Inside, though, something had changed. She no longer believed that things would improve or that they would eventually accept her. Instead, she quietly began planning for a future where she wouldn't depend on any of them. She started saving money, making private calls, and gathering the strength she would need when the day came to walk away. She didn't know when that day would be, but she knew it was coming. Emily never expected to hear something that would change her life in just a few seconds. It happened one evening when she returned home earlier than planned. Ryan didn't hear her come in, and his voice carried clearly through the half-closed door of the living room. She froze the moment she heard her name. Linda was on speakerphone, her tone sharp as always, questioning why Ryan hadn't pushed the wedding plans forward. Ryan sighed and said words that felt like a knife cutting straight through Emily's chest. He told his mother he never really loved Emily. He said she was comfortable, someone who didn't challenge him. He called her easy to control and added that she would never leave, no matter how badly they treated her. He laughed slightly as he said it, as if the idea of Emily staying through anything was amusing. Emily stood still, unable to breathe for a moment. Everything around her blurred. The walls, the furniture, even the floor felt unsteady. She had known the family didn't value her, but she never imagined Ryan spoke about her like that. Every promise he had made, every gentle moment they shared, suddenly felt fake. The betrayal hit her so deeply that she couldn't even cry at first. It was like her heart simply shut down to protect itself. She backed away quietly, acting as though she had never been there. She didn't confront him, didn't scream, didn't show she had heard a thing. Instead, she walked into the bedroom and sat down, trying to steady her breathing. The man she thought she would marry saw her as nothing more than a tool, someone he could shape and control. The realization hurt more than any insult Linda or Macy had ever thrown at her. But after the initial shock faded, something inside Emily hardened. She understood that speaking up right then would only give them more power. They would twist her words, pretend she misunderstood, or make her feel guilty for overhearing them. She had no proof except her own memory, and she knew that wouldn't be enough. So she made a different choice. She pulled herself together, wiped her face, and began paying closer attention. If Ryan and his family believed she was easy to control, then she would let them think exactly that. She would stay quiet, stay calm, and listen even more carefully than before. That night, she started recording the conversations they had. The subtle digs about her job, the financial decisions Ryan made without telling her, the jokes that painted her as weak or undeserving. She saved text messages, kept copies of paperwork, and documented every moment that showed who they really were. The more she collected, the more she realized she wasn't building a revenge plan. She was building a way out. Everything she saved became proof of what her life had truly become. She wasn't gathering it to hurt them. She was gathering it because she knew one day she would need to protect herself. And when that day came, she wanted to be ready. Emily kept going to work every day as if nothing in her life had changed, even though inside she felt like she was holding pieces of herself together just to get through each hour. She stayed quiet, did her tasks, and smiled when she needed to, but the weight of what she had learned about Ryan never left her. It sat in her chest like a stone. She knew she couldn't keep carrying it alone forever, but she didn't know who she could trust. Most people in her life were connected to Ryan or his family in some way. She couldn't risk giving them any information. The only person who seemed genuinely kind without wanting anything in return was her coworker, Daniel Hayes. He wasn't someone she talked to often outside of work tasks, but he had a calm, steady presence that made her feel safe. One afternoon, when she felt especially overwhelmed, Daniel noticed the exhaustion in her eyes and gently asked if she was okay. Emily hesitated, but something inside her finally let go. She told him pieces of what was happening. Not everything, but enough for him to understand she was living in a painful, controlling situation. Daniel didn't push for details. He just listened carefully, never interrupting. When she finished, he looked at her with concern instead of judgment. He told her she didn't deserve to feel this way, that no one should be made to feel small or trapped in their own life. His calm voice helped her breathe for the first time in weeks. Then he mentioned something she didn't expect. His mother was a lawyer who specialized in family matters. He said she could talk to Emily privately and explain what her options were. No pressure, no commitment, just information. Emily felt nervous, but also strangely hopeful. For months she had believed Ryan and his family held all the power. She thought leaving would destroy her, that they would crush her reputation or make her look unstable. She never imagined she had any legal rights or protections. But meeting Daniel's mother changed everything. When Emily sat down with her, the truth hit her hard. She learned how many lines Ryan and his family had crossed, controlling finances, manipulating decisions, restricting her independence, and emotionally damaging her over and over again. She realized she had been living under a kind of pressure she didn't recognize at the time because it happened so slowly. The lawyer explained that Emily wasn't powerless at all. In fact, the evidence Emily had been quietly collecting gave her leverage she never knew she had. She could walk away without losing everything. She could protect herself legally and financially. That conversation lit a spark in Emily. For the first time, she didn't feel trapped. She felt aware. She felt informed. She felt a small but growing sense of strength returning to her. She began making quiet preparations, organizing her documents, backing up recordings, setting aside small amounts of money, and creating a plan only she knew about. Emily wasn't ready to leave yet, but she finally understood that she didn't have to stay. And that knowledge became the first real piece of freedom she had felt in a very long time. Emily didn't realize how noticeable her silence had become until the Brooks family started acting differently around her. For months, every insult had hit her hard, and they enjoyed watching her flinch or shrink back. But now, when Linda made a cutting comment, Emily didn't react. When Macy mocked her career or her clothes, Emily didn't defend herself or try to explain anything. She simply looked at them with a calmness they weren't used to. Her lack of response confused them. They had always fed off her discomfort, and now that it was gone, they didn't know what to do. Ryan noticed the change first. Whenever he criticized her, she didn't try to win him over or apologize. She didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't try to fix things the way she used to. She just listened quietly and walked away. At first, he acted irritated, but soon irritation turned into suspicion. He began asking her why she was acting strange, why she wasn't being herself. Emily simply said she was tired. It was the truth, just not in the way Ryan understood. Soon, he shifted strategies. He started being unusually affectionate, offering compliments he never used to give, buying small gifts, and acting as if he suddenly cared about her dreams again. It felt forced and hollow, but Emily played along. He even suggested pushing the wedding forward, claiming he didn't want to waste any more time. Emily knew the real reason. He wanted to lock her in before she slipped too far from his control. The Brooks women noticed the distance too. Linda tried a softer approach, speaking to Emily in a tone that almost sounded gentle. Macy suddenly acted curious about Emily's job and pretended she wanted to connect more. It was clear they were uncomfortable with the idea of losing the power they had over her. They didn't love her, they loved controlling her. And they sensed something they had never felt from Emily before: independence. Inside, Emily stayed steady. She didn't let herself be fooled by their sudden kindness. She knew exactly why it was happening. They saw their grip loosening and were trying to tighten it again. But Emily was no longer emotionally attached to their approval. She already had her plan forming, her evidence gathered, and her exit prepared. Every time Ryan hugged her unexpectedly or talked about their future with new enthusiasm, she pretended to smile. She matched his energy enough to keep him relaxed. She didn't want him to suspect how much she already knew or how much she had collected. She needed him to believe she was still his quiet, obedient fiancée until the very last moment. Emily reminded herself daily that she was almost there. Almost free. Almost ready. The strength she felt building inside her grew with each calm breath, each ignored insult, each moment she chose not to react. The day she would reveal the truth was getting closer, and the Brooks family had no idea that the woman they thought they could break was the one preparing to break their entire illusion. The evening that changed everything started like any other dinner at the Brooks home. Tense, uncomfortable, and full of small comments meant to cut Emily down. She had learned to walk in with a steady breath and a calm face, but this dinner felt different from the start. More relatives than usual were there, and Emily could tell Linda enjoyed having an audience. She watched Linda move around the room, smiling proudly, as if she were preparing for a performance. When everyone finally sat down, the conversations flowed easily among the Brooks family. Emily stayed quiet, answering only when spoken to. She thought she could handle whatever was coming, but Linda surprised her with how far she was willing to go. In the middle of passing dishes around, Linda cleared her throat loudly, making sure every eye in the room was on her. With a smile that masked cruelty, she said, "Ryan has carried enough dead weight. He deserves a real woman, someone who brings something valuable into his life." The room went silent. Emily felt the words hit her hard, sharper than any insult before. Linda didn't even look ashamed. She looked satisfied. Macy snickered, and a few relatives shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Ryan didn't defend Emily. He didn't say a single word. Emily kept her face calm, even though her heart felt like it was cracking open. She didn't argue, didn't excuse herself, didn't cry. She only stared at her plate and breathed slowly. Outside, she showed nothing. Inside, the decision was already made. Whatever doubts she had before disappeared completely. There was no saving this relationship, no making peace with this family. It was over, even if no one else knew it yet. When they returned home, Emily expected Ryan to act guilty or ashamed. Instead, he acted irritated, as if her quietness after dinner was an inconvenience. After a moment of silence, he finally confessed something she never imagined he would say out loud. He admitted he had been cheating for months. He said it casually, like it wasn't a big deal. Then he added that it didn't change anything because he still planned to marry her. According to him, no one else would want her anyway. Those words didn't break her. They confirmed everything she already knew. Ryan looked at her like she was a burden he had to manage, someone too weak to ever walk away. What he didn't know was that Emily had been preparing for this moment for months. She had every insult, every manipulation, every degrading remark recorded. And now she had his confession too. Emily didn't shout or question him. She simply nodded slowly, keeping her expression blank. Ryan mistook her silence for acceptance, but Emily wasn't accepting anything. She was memorizing his face as he spoke, knowing she would never look at him the same way again. That night, while Ryan slept peacefully beside her, Emily quietly backed up the new recording and added it to her collection. She felt no fear, no hesitation. This was the final straw. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The next steps were already clear in her mind. The life they thought they controlled was about to fall apart, and Emily didn't need to raise her voice to make it happen. Emily waited until she had a full day alone before she made her next move. Ryan had left early for work, and Linda wasn't expecting to see her. It was the perfect moment. She gathered everything she had collected. Her recordings, copies of financial papers Ryan had hidden from her, text messages, dates, and written accounts of every incident. She placed them neatly in a folder, her hands steady in a way they had never been before. For the first time, she felt she wasn't acting out of fear. She was acting out of clarity. She met Daniel's mother in a quiet office away from her workplace. The moment Emily handed over the file, she felt a small weight lift from her shoulders. Daniel's mother opened it carefully, and as she went through the contents, her expression changed from curiosity to disbelief, then to concern. When she finally looked up, she told Emily she had more than enough evidence, not just to leave safely, but to protect herself legally. She encouraged Emily to stand firm and reminded her she wasn't alone in this. With the lawyer's guidance, Emily filed for separation, financial recovery, and a restraining order. These were steps she never imagined taking months before, but now they felt necessary, almost natural. The paperwork moved quickly because of the solid evidence she provided. Every document, every recording strengthened her case. Emily wasn't afraid anymore. She was prepared. When the Brooks family received the papers, the shock hit them hard. They had always believed Emily would stay no matter what. They thought she was too weak to challenge them, too attached to Ryan to ever walk away. Instead, they were served with legal documents that detailed their behavior in undeniable detail. Linda was furious, Macy was stunned, and Ryan looked confused more than anything else. Ryan showed up demanding answers, claiming that Emily was overreacting, insisting she had twisted things to make him look bad. He told her the family would never forgive her, and that she was ruining lives. Emily didn't respond. She simply let her attorney handle every word. When Ryan repeated that she had made everything up, the lawyer calmly pressed a button and began playing the recordings. Ryan's voice filled the room, cold, mocking, admitting his infidelity, belittling Emily, encouraging his family's insults. Then came Linda's remarks, Macy's comments, and the manipulation Emily had endured for so long. The Brooks family went silent. Their confidence drained away in seconds. Macy's face went pale. Linda's mouth tightened, realizing she had no defense. And Ryan, he was no longer angry. He was terrified. For the first time, they saw the truth. Emily had been watching. Emily had been listening. Emily had never been weak. She had been patient. They tried begging, then blaming, then pretending they didn't remember saying those things. None of it mattered. The evidence stood on its own. The legal process moved forward, and Emily felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. She didn't need to shout or argue. Their own words destroyed the power they thought they had over her. The plan she had carried quietly for months was finally in motion, and the Brooks family could only watch as everything they built through control began to crumble. The weeks that followed were a blur of hearings, paperwork, and difficult conversations, but Emily stayed steady through all of it. She had support now, and the truth was finally out in the open. The Brooks family, who once walked around with pride and superiority, began to crumble under the weight of their own actions. Every insult they had thrown at her, every manipulation they had justified, now stood against them in an official setting. They had always assumed there would be no consequences because Emily would never speak up. They never imagined she would stand in front of them with solid evidence and a calm expression. The legal consequences hit them harder than they expected. Ryan was forced to pay fines related to emotional and financial harm. The restraining order limited how close he could get to Emily, and the financial settlement gave her enough stability to start her new life without fear. When the investigation into his conduct at work began, triggered by Emily's documentation of how he handled joint finances, it didn't take long before his employer suspended him. A few weeks later, he was dismissed entirely. The man who once bragged about being in control of everything suddenly had no job, no fiancé, and no reputation left to hide behind. Linda faced her own problems. Several people who had witnessed her behavior toward Emily came forward during the inquiry. Complaints that had been ignored in the past were now taken seriously, especially since Emily's recordings showed clear patterns of harassment. Linda found herself under strict review at her workplace, with mandatory counseling and the possibility of losing her position. She went from being respected to being watched closely, her confidence replaced with fear of what might happen next. Macy didn't escape the fallout either. She had built her career on pretending to be professional and polished, but her recorded comments and involvement in belittling Emily spread quickly among her colleagues. Opportunities she had been pursuing suddenly disappeared. Projects she expected to lead were handed to others. People stopped trusting her judgment, and some openly questioned her character. Her carefully crafted image cracked, and she couldn't repair it no matter how hard she tried. Through all of this, Emily remained quiet. She didn't celebrate their downfall or boast about what she had done. She simply watched from a distance as the truth reshaped their lives. She had spent years feeling powerless under their cruelty, and now they were experiencing the consequences of their own choices. She didn't need to attack them. She didn't need to say a word. Their own behavior had done all the damage. Emily focused on rebuilding her life, knowing she no longer had to walk on eggshells or fear humiliation. The Brooks family had once acted like they were untouchable, but now everything they took pride in, status, respect, control, fell apart piece by piece. Emily didn't feel joy in their suffering, but she did feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: relief. She had survived them, and they could no longer reach her. After the legal process settled and the Brooks family faded from her daily life, Emily finally felt the air around her shift. There was no yelling, no bitterness, no constant fear of saying the wrong thing. For the first time in years, she felt space to breathe, to think, to exist without someone watching her every move. She moved into a small apartment overlooking a quiet street, a place that felt nothing like the Brooks household. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She could decorate it however she wanted, wake up when she chose, and walk through the door without tension gripping her chest. Emily started therapy soon after. At first, she felt strange talking about her feelings, unsure how much to open up. But her therapist gave her patience and understanding, something she had never received from the Brooks family. Slowly, Emily learned how deeply their words had shaped her. She began to understand why she had stayed for so long and why their insults had sunk so deeply into her heart. Each session helped her piece together a version of herself she had forgotten, a woman who had once been hopeful, capable, and eager to build a meaningful life. With that growing strength came another change. She left her old job. Too many memories were tied to the place she had gone to every day while hiding her pain. She applied elsewhere, choosing a job where her skills were valued and her ideas were heard. When she received an offer, she felt a spark of pride she hadn't felt in years. It was the first real sign that her life was moving forward in a healthier direction. Daniel remained by her side throughout this time. Not intrusive, not demanding, just present. He checked on her without hovering and encouraged her without pushing. He listened when she wanted to talk and stayed silent when she didn't. His presence felt steady and safe, something she didn't know she needed until she had it. Small gestures from him, bringing her coffee, helping her move furniture, sending a message asking if she had eaten, reminded her that kindness didn't have to come with conditions. The more time she spent around him, the more she realized how different genuine care felt from the control she had lived under. Daniel never tried to shape her into anyone else. He never spoke over her or made her feel small. He simply stood beside her, letting her heal at her own pace. And in that calmness, Emily discovered a feeling she had almost forgotten: worthiness. She began taking long walks after work, breathing deeply, feeling her confidence return a little at a time. She cooked meals she loved, read books she had abandoned, and made new routines that belonged only to her. Each small choice reminded her she was capable of making her own decisions. Every day she grew a little stronger, a little braver, a little more certain that she could build a future on her own terms. Emily no longer viewed herself through the harsh eyes of the Brooks family. She saw her strength, her resilience, and her ability to rise after being pushed down for so long. The life she was creating wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was hers. And that made it beautiful. Months passed, and Emily's life slowly settled into something gentle and steady. She worked at her new job, attended therapy, and spent quiet evenings in her apartment without fear or tension. She felt lighter, clearer, and happier than she had in years. It was during one of these peaceful afternoons that her phone lit up with a name she hoped she would never see again: Ryan. For a moment, she simply stared at the screen. She wasn't afraid, just surprised. She let the call ring until it stopped. A minute later, a long message arrived. Ryan wrote about how terrible his life had become, how unfair everything was, how his family had manipulated him, and how he now realized he had treated her horribly. He insisted he had changed. He begged for a second chance, saying he missed her, needed her, and was ready to start over. The words sounded desperate and rehearsed, nothing like the cold comments he used to make. Emily didn't respond. She didn't feel anger or sadness. She only felt distance, like she was reading a message from a stranger. Over the next few days, he kept calling and texting, switching between begging and blaming. Sometimes he cried in his voicemails, saying he couldn't live without her. Other times he snapped and accused her of being unfair and overdramatic. It was clear he still didn't truly understand what he had done. Finally, Emily decided to answer, but not with words. She opened the folder where she kept the recordings, selected several of the clearest ones, and sent them to him. They contained his insults, his cruel jokes, his confession about cheating, and the moments he believed she was too weak to walk away. Emily sent them without a caption, without an explanation, without emotion. Then she pressed block. There was no satisfaction in hearing his final failed call go straight to voicemail. There was no thrill in cutting him off. Instead, Emily felt a deep, quiet peace. She no longer needed to argue, defend herself, or prove anything. His own voice had done all the explaining. His own behavior had written the ending. News filtered back to her through small whispers. Ryan avoiding people out of embarrassment, Linda keeping her head down at work, Macy staying silent to avoid further damage. The Brooks family, once loud and controlling, disappeared from public conversations. They no longer had the confidence to comment on anyone else's life when their own had unraveled so publicly. They tried to move on, but the cracks in their image were permanent. They had built everything on arrogance and cruelty, and now they had nothing left to hide behind. Emily didn't check in on them. She didn't care to. Their downfall wasn't her goal. It was simply the natural result of their actions. Her revenge wasn't dramatic or loud. It wasn't about destroying them. It was about freeing herself. She sat in her apartment one evening, sipping tea, feeling a sense of calm she had never known while living under their control. She realized her true victory was simple. She had a life where their voices no longer mattered. Their opinions held no power. Their insults had no place in her world. Her quiet strength, the same strength they once mocked, had become the force that lifted her out of their reach. Her freedom was the punishment they never expected.